Okay, capital budgeting, problems number 11 and 12. A project has expected cash flows starting with year 1, 2200, 2900, 3500, and finally in year 4, 4000. The profitability index is 1.14, the discount rate is 12%. What is the initial cost of the project? Discount rate has nothing to do with figuring out the profitability index. Remember, oh, excuse me, but it does for the future cash flows. Anyway, so remember, this is real important because it got the professor had it wrong on one area. Profitability index equals present value of future cash flows, not net present value of future cash flows over the initial cost, initial investment, whatever you want to call it. Remember, the difference between present value of future cash flows and net present value of cash flows is present value is you take these cash flows, these 4 of them, discount them back to year 0 at the discount rate. That gives you the present value of those cash flows, these different cash flows. The net present value is the present value of those future cash flows minus the initial cost, which you're trying to find out the initial cost in this case, which it turns out to be $8,166. Okay, so you're taking the present value of the future cash flows over the initial cost. That gives you the PI, profitability index. They tell you the profitability index. You figure out the present value of the future cash flows by putting these all in your calculator, discounting them at 12%. That gets you $9,309.45 over initial cost equals that. You can switch these things around to make it work out where $8,116 was the initial investment, initial cost. And question number 12. Considering the two mutually exclusive projects, given an 11% required rate of return, cost of capital, discount rate. He uses all different terms just to try to confuse you. They're all the same thing. Okay, determine which project the firm would accept using the profitability index, profitability rule. Again, he starts to mix up the word. That's profitability index. So what you do is you take the present value, and this is crucial again, it's the present value of the cash flows. These you're figuring out, the present value of these. You don't use this, it's not the net present value. You actually use this, but you take the present value of these and divide it by the cost to get the profitability index. Take the present value of these cash flows and divide it by the initial cost. Net present value, you take the present value of these cash flows and subtract it. That gives you net present value. Profitability index is present value of future cash flows, that's these 3, divided by the initial cost. Okay? And so using that, if you do that, use 11% required rate of return to discount those cash flows, and you would choose project B, because when you do that, the profitability index for project A is 1.09, the profitability index for project B is 1.13, so you would select project B. Now they want you to determine which project you would accept using net present value. Of course, net present value, you can plug these all in the calculator. This is the CO or CFO, CO, whatever, CFO. The cash flow in the first year, remember, make it negative, and then plug in these different cash flows. You get the net present value for project A is 4,096, for project B is 2,537, so you would choose A. The question is explain why your answers in A and B are different. Okay, it's real important to understand profitability index only is a ratio of what your present value of your cash flows is over your initial cost. Net present value is telling you what your net positive, those cash flows minus the initial cost, whether you have a positive value or a negative value. The bigger the number, the more profitable you are. If it goes negative, then you lose more money. So net present value is an absolute amount of dollars that you're going to make or lose, gain or it's an absolute value of a gain or a loss when you take the present value of those cash flows and minus the initial cost. So the difference here is with Project B, it has a higher profitability index, but also has a lower initial investment. So even though it's a 1.13 is the profitability index, when you've only got $20,000, you're not going to make as much money as when you're investing $45,000 and have a profitability index of 1.09, 45,000. So this can be, profitability index can be a little bit deceptive because it really depends on how much you invest. In net present value, you're kind of concerned with just the overall amount. This is more of a ratio of what your profitability is compared to what you initially invested. I don't know if I was real clear on that. With net present value, a big part of it's going to be just how much you've invested. Excuse me, the profitability ratio. I screwed that up. It doesn't matter. That's the difference between the two. This is just a ratio between what you invested and what the present value of this future cash flows is. This is just telling you an absolute amount of net plus or net minus of your cash flows. In this case, you're almost $4,100 of positive cash flow. In this case, you're about $2,500 of positive cash flow. I didn't do too good of a job of explaining that, but that's problems 11 and 12.